We are talking about AMULET, also known as Outside. This one is directed by Romola Garai and stars Imelda Staunton. And this one focuses on this guy called Thomas, played by Alec Sikaranu. And he is an ex-Eastern European soldier, now living on the streets in London, suffering from a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder. He has to tie his hands together to stop himself from hurting himself and other people. And one day he is at the end of his tether, so to speak, having just survived the fire. And he's picked up by a nun and offered sanctuary in this kind of house where this woman is living, who is, we are told, is caring for her ailing mother upstairs, and she's, you know, not coping so well. So essentially, Thomas is given a second chance to kind of help out around this house, in essentially for room and board, so to speak. So he agrees. But there seems to be something not quite right here. There seems to be some type of supernatural presence around. What that is, you have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss, first of all, what works, first of all, with AMULET. This is a slow burn, psychological type of demonic possession style movie. I guess you could compare it to the likes of Hereditary to a certain degree, I suppose. So it's in kind of that vein, I would say. Certainly not a movie where you're going to have lots of jump scares. There is some kind of like horrific imagery, but it's not loads. It's very much a psychological, character-driven movie. So that may not be for everyone. I do think the performances are pretty strong here, particularly from Thomas, who we see both in kind of real time and in kind of flashbacks and kind of extended flashbacks as well. But the supporting cast as well, I think, is all pretty good. And do a decent enough job here. And when we do see sort of images of what you would consider horror imagery here, it's great. I mean, there are creature effects here that do look to a very high standard, and you'll be thinking of, you know, Pan's Labyrinth and things like that, and certain kind of sequences. And it has a very grotesque beauty to it to a certain degree, and it's quite visually arresting. And the story itself has some good elements into it, I would say. The setup is kind of fairly strong, and through the movie, things are kind of revealed as to kind of clues are kind of left for the viewer. And it's certainly will go in maybe a direction you're not particularly expecting. But what doesn't work, I feel the story structure here has lots of good elements, but when you put it together as a cohesive whole, it loses something, unfortunately. And maybe the inexperience of the director here, I feel it doesn't feel like a completely cohesive story to me. Some of the elements on their own, I think, are interesting and kind of well handled, but it maybe gets a little bit too surreal for its own good. I feel like the director here wants to make a very specific artistic mark upon her work, and I think because of that, the narrative flow is somewhat lost, unfortunately. This is also going to be way too slow a burn for a lot of people. Like I've said, we do have a pepper throughout the movie, some type of more graphic imagery, but it's very slight, to be brutally honest. And I just don't think modern audiences who are used to a more of a visceral horror experience will get much out of this. I just think it's going to be a little bit too slow, a little bit more too art house for some. And I have to say the most obvious thing here, I just don't think the story is put together particularly well. It gets a little bit lost in its own kind of mythology, so to speak, and doesn't translate particularly well to screen. The story kind of makes a certain amount of sense, but I don't think it's particularly the sum of its parts, so to speak. Overall, it becomes a little bit of a mixed bag. So I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. I do feel there is some flourishes here, directorial flourishes, that are very impressive. But I think maybe the director was too interested in having those directorial flourishes and less worried about making a more of a cohesive narrative here. So I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.